You survived every reorganization. You outlasted 3 managers. You worked for years without anyone questioning your place on the team. Then a new manager arrived, and something changed immediately. You can't quite explain it, but you can feel it. Meetings you used to be invited to now happen without you. Your name appears less often in important emails. The new manager greets you politely, says everything is fine, yet something feels off. Something you can't identify yet, but something that's already affecting your concentration, your sleep, and your willingness to go to work every morning. What you're feeling isn't paranoia, it's information. And there's a possibility nobody is going to tell you out loud. The decision about who stays may already have been made. In many cases, it was made during the first 4 weeks. What comes next isn't always an opportunity to prove your value. Sometimes it's the quiet management of a conclusion that already exists. If that makes you uncomfortable, good. It means you still haven't seen how this process really works. And that's exactly the problem. Before we continue, if this channel isn't already part of your routine, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Here, we talk about what really happens inside companies, with a level of clarity the corporate world rarely allows itself. Every video you miss is another invisible rule still operating against you. Why the first 30 days aren't what you think. Most people who get a new manager do the same thing. They work harder. They communicate more. They try to demonstrate their value with more urgency than at any other point in their career. And that effort, while understandable, is often answering a question that already has an answer. A manager took over a department of 12 people. Less than 6 months later, 5 were gone. None were fired during the first month. None received an immediate formal warning. But when someone examined the full timeline, they found something specific. The 5 people who left were the exact same 5 people who had been left out of private conversations during the first 3 weeks. It wasn't a coincidence, it was the map. New managers rarely arrive with a blank slate. They arrive with prior conversations, recommendations from their network, and a mental model of how they want the team to operate. That model already includes names. And if your name isn't among the people who inspire trust from the beginning, the work you do in the following months may not be enough to change that equation. Not because you're less capable, but because what's at stake isn't your performance. It's your place within that person's trust structure. This isn't cynicism. It's the difference between understanding the system and operating within it with incomplete information. What happens during those 4 weeks? There's something new managers do during their first month that very few people recognize for what it really is. They build a hierarchy of trust, and that hierarchy forms long before any formal evaluation. Pay attention to who they meet with privately during the first few weeks. Pay attention to who they invite into early strategic conversations. Pay attention to who is introduced to senior leadership and who is mentioned only in passing. Those aren't social coincidences, they're decisions, and each one is drawing the boundary around who will matter within that manager's version of the team. Within this process, loyalty doesn't mean unconditional agreement. It means predictability. A new manager isn't necessarily looking for the best professional in the abstract. They're looking for the professional whose presence reduces risk. And in that context, risk is measured by something very specific. Who chose whom? If the new manager didn't choose you, your history within the company doesn't belong to them. And what doesn't belong to them often becomes what they feel the need to reorganize. The signs the decision has already been made. Once you understand that the decision may be made within the first 30 days, the signs that follow stop looking like coincidences and start looking like what they often are: the management of a conclusion that already exists. The first sign is that you're no longer in the rooms where decisions are made. If there are meetings you used to attend, and now you're no longer invited, without a clear explanation, that's not an oversight. It's a reassignment of your institutional position. Meetings aren't just exchanges of information. They're where visibility is built and where the perceptions that determine who advances take shape. Being removed from those rooms is often the first step toward disappearing within the system. The second sign is that your projects change hands. If responsibilities that used to be yours are given to someone else without a reason that makes operational sense, What is being taken away isn't just work, it's the context that made you relevant. And if the person receiving those projects has less experience than you, the logic is no longer operational. It's political. The third sign is the hiring of someone whose profile overlaps with yours. When that happens, it's possible your role is being expanded. It's also possible it's being duplicated, so a future departure becomes easier to justify. The difference between those possibilities can be seen in access, how much institutional space the new person receives compared to you. If, within a few weeks, they accumulate the visibility you spent years building, that deserves attention. The fourth sign is public praise combined with a complete absence of real support. Some managers manage your sense of security with remarkable precision. They speak positively about you in front of the team. They tell you your work is solid. Then, when conversations turn to promotions, strategic projects, or formal recognition, your name disappears. In that context, the praise isn't recognition. It's risk management. It's how someone avoids friction while a transition moves forward quietly. The fifth sign is the most dangerous, precisely because it's the one most people mistake for legitimate professional expectations. If your work starts receiving a level of scrutiny that didn't exist before, pay attention. If your mistakes begin to be documented with a level of precision that isn't applied to the rest of the team, pay attention. In many companies, the path to a formal termination doesn't begin with a direct conversation. It begins with documentation. When that file is complete, the decision made during the first few weeks already has the administrative support needed to be carried out. Recognizing that logic early completely changes the decisions available to you. If this channel still isn't part of your weekly routine, now is the time to subscribe and turn on notifications. What you've just heard isn't theory. It's the pattern that appears, with variations, in many replacement processes within corporate structures. What you can do when you recognize the pattern. Everything up to this point sounds reasonable when you read it. It's much harder when the person who needs to trust you is also the person who may be looking for your replacement. Recognizing these signs isn't about panic. It's about stopping yourself from responding to the wrong situation. Most people who notice these dynamics increase their effort in technical work. They deliver faster, they work longer hours, they try to gain visibility through performance. That response is aimed at a performance evaluation. But what may actually be happening isn't a performance evaluation. It's a trust decision. And trust decisions, in general, aren't reversed through productivity. They're reversed through relationships. The first step is to ask your new manager directly how they define success under their leadership. That question communicates three things at once: that you're focused on the future, that you recognize their authority to establish new standards, and that you have the maturity to seek clarity instead of making assumptions. Those are three important messages in a single conversation. The second step is to make yourself visible in the initiatives that matter to them, not the ones that existed before they arrived. If the new manager has a priority project or a recurring concern, that's information about how relevance is built within their framework. Contributing to what they need is different from maintaining responsibilities that existed before them. The third step is the one most people neglect because it feels premature. Start strengthening your relationships outside this manager's perimeter. Other leaders, contacts in other departments, your external professional network. Because if your departure is coming anyway, what determines whether it becomes a crisis or a managed transition is the number of options available at that moment. Options aren't built when you need them. They're built long before you need them. And when you have them, the balance within that relationship changes in a quiet but very real way. What this moment is teaching you: a new manager is not a threat by definition, but they are a test. And in many cases, that test doesn't unfold over several months. It happens during the first 4 weeks. What comes afterward is often the execution of what was already decided during that initial period. What many people discover too late is that professional security doesn't come only from doing your job well. It also comes from understanding the power dynamics around you and from not depending on the goodwill of a single person for your career to move forward. That doesn't mean cynicism. It means clarity. And clarity, unlike naive optimism, protects you when the environment changes without warning. If what you're experiencing resembles what has been described here, then you already have part of the diagnosis. The next step is not desperation, it's deliberate observation. It's strategic action before the file is complete. If this video gave you something you didn't have before, leave a like. That tells the algorithm this content deserves to reach more people navigating the same labyrinths you are. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you haven't already. Every week, we publish a video about the rules the corporate world never explains directly, but that shape every important decision in your career. Not continuing to watch this content isn't a neutral position. It's choosing to keep operating with incomplete information. And in a system with so many invisible variables, that always comes at a cost.